Right, in this video, we're going to talk about how to create a weekly schedule that includes the 7 spiritual practices, or what I call the core spiritual practices. There's many, but how do we include the 7? So we're going to learn about 6 compelling reasons why you should change your weekly schedule and how to go do a total renovation, overwork, renew your weekly schedule so that you are following Jesus well and so that you are growing into the man or woman of God that Jesus wants you to be. You know, I changed my schedule entirely about a year ago. I didn't start with, would I like to lose some weight or improve my diet or get fitter or have more time for entertainment? I started with the best question that you could ask, which is, how do I get closer to Jesus? How do I be with him and spend time with him so I can become like him and do what he wants me to do and do what he did, what I read in the Bible? Interestingly, as I asked that question, the first thing I bumped into was, well, I need to change my schedule, my routines, my habits. A lot of them had just become what they were for no reason at all. I just had particular habits that were shaping my week, and I wanted my week to look different and to be more God-centered. Interestingly, it affected my diet. It affected my time that I spent at work. It affected my days when I went to sleep, all kinds of different things. Probably the biggest thing actually was my sleep. As I really dug into how do I have a better, deeper prayer life, I started to realize that for me, I needed to get up in the morning and be able to pray first thing in the morning. In order to do that, I had to change how I slept, my environment of sleeping, so I was getting better sleep, and then how I went to bed the night before, because preparing myself for prayer actually required me to go to bed at a decent hour, to go to bed in a healthy way without screens and blue light in my face until midnight, but to go to bed early, to read before I went to bed, to have a slow wind down before I went to sleep so that I could wake up in the morning and actually pray. So you might find as you renovate and watch this video and look at changing your schedule, all kinds of things in your lifestyle might pop up that need to be looked at in order to create the space that you need to spend time with God. What I discovered was that good sleep is actually critical for a great prayer life. So why change your weekly schedule? I mean, what's the point? Why bother with it? The weekly schedule you've got now, you've got that because you want that. It's become a certain way because you wanted it to be that way. But why change it? Why look at changing it? Especially why look at changing it for spiritual reasons when I know, like me, you have so much going on, so many responsibilities, and feel like you just don't have enough time in the day? Well, first and foremost, it's because you do highly value slowing down. You understand that to have a deep spiritual life requires you to slow down. And you are keenly aware that hurry and rushing and all of these things in our modern culture are poisoning your spiritual life. That's the first reason to change. Secondly, you highly value a life lived from the divine center. That means you start your week with God. You start your planning of your week or planning of your schedule by putting God first. And you're keenly aware that there's idols all the time trying to come and be at the center of your life, whether that's work, whether it's entertainment. For some people, it's even their kids and looking after their kids. That becomes the central decision-making filter for everything. But you highly value God being that decision-making center. Thirdly, you highly value intentional spiritual formation. You're aware that you are being formed by something, and often we're being formed by things unintentionally, stories in our culture, experiences we've had, negative things going on, feelings that we have. These things form us and shape us into the man or the woman that we are. But you highly value intentional formation, meaning you want to make the decision to follow Jesus and to apprenticeship under the Rabbi Jesus in a way that's going to grow you spiritually into what God is calling you to be. You highly value the spiritual practices and know that doing the spiritual practices, so things like fasting, prayer, scripture, Sabbath, living in community, simplicity, silence and solitude, I think they're the 7. You value that these can actually create a structure for you in your week or in your life that is going to allow you to follow God the way that you want to follow him. And you're keenly aware that your schedule or your calendar reflects your values. And that's very confronting when you look at your calendar or you look at how you spend your time in a week. It actually reflects back to you like a mirror what you truly value. Finally, you highly value your time on earth, believing that God has given you time down here for a purpose and a reason. You don't want to waste that time. Again, your schedule is going to reflect if you're using your time well or not. And maybe as a final thing that you value, why would you bother changing your weekly schedule? Because you know as well as I do that a good renovation of your weekly schedule every now and again is critical. If you're still living the same kind of routine you were 2 or 3 years ago, then you're probably stuck in a rut. It's important to always be looking, like we do with our budgets, like we do with our relationships, like we do with our friendship with God, to be looking at our schedule and going, is it actually serving me? And you know, if you're a person that wants to grow, you know that your schedule, how you spend your time, often needs a process of renewal. So here's a step-by-step guide to simply renovate your weekly schedule. I'll put these things down in the description so you can read through them in a bit more detail, but I'll quickly just skim over them now. So first of all, you want to grab a big piece of paper, or you might use your computer, but it's probably easier to have a pencil in hand and to be able to draw this out. The first thing you want to do is just articulate, write down a list of all the reasons why you want to organize your week around the divine center, around God first, why you want to follow Jesus well, why you want to be a deep spiritual person, has a deep and meaningful friendship with Jesus. Why are these things important? Because if you're not clear on your why, if you don't have a vision, if you don't have an understanding why you would do this, then the how is going to be difficult. We always need a why, and then we can navigate any kind of how. So list that out first. Secondly, separate your week into 2 lists. So look at all the activities that you do in a typical week and separate them into a negotiable and a non-negotiable list. So the negotiable things are going to be things that could change, things that you could get rid of, things that could be maybe set aside for a time being, things maybe that have some flexibility in them. So be brutal on the negotiable things. You'd be surprised if you really critique your activities. Most of them, sometimes even things like work, have some level of flexibility or negotiability in them. So put them in that pile, that list first, and then look at the non-negotiable things. So we all have things in our life that we can't really move in our schedules. For me, I've got to run kids to school every morning, Monday to Friday. So I can't really change that. My kids can't be late to school. You might have work commitments. You might have other commitments that are really non-negotiable. They're things that you've committed to. Usually your non-negotiable activities are things that affect somebody else. So the way that you exercise, the times that you eat, all of these things that are more personal, they're often the most negotiable things, where the least negotiable things are usually things that affect somebody else. So put them into 2 lists. Now on that bit of paper, draw out your schedule of the week. So just put Monday, Tuesday, right through to Sunday, and then divide each day into morning, afternoon, and night. So you're really clear on your main pockets of time, morning, afternoon, night, for each day of the week and what's going on generally in those spaces. Now, add in, first and foremost, your non-negotiable activities. What are the things in your week that can't really change? They're quite solid. Now remember, we're being brutal about our activities, so only add in the things that 100% affect others that you cannot change. Secondly, now add in your spiritual practices, okay? Before we get to the negotiable activities or the things that are flexi, add in your spiritual practices. When's the best time to pray, read scripture? The 3 things I'd encourage you with is prayer, scripture, and silence and solitude. Put them in every day if you can. Just for half an hour, put them in every day. These are the basic practices. They're going to help you follow Jesus. For me, it's 6:45 a.m. every morning. That's the best time for me. But for you, it might be nighttime, might be in the middle of the day. I don't know. Put them in. It might be different every day. I'd encourage you to put those practices in first. Secondly, I'd put the practice of living in community in, because that's really important. So worshiping together with your church family, probably on a Sunday morning, being in a small group, mentoring relationships that mentor you in your spiritual life, hospitality, having people over, eating and drinking together, maybe reaching people with the gospel through hospitality. I'd put those kind of community things in next. So if you're doing well and you already maybe do these things and you've already got them nutted out and you've got some more space, I'd go to some of the other practices. So next I would go to the Sabbath. Add in a Sabbath if you can. A Sabbath is a 24-hour period once a week where we rest from our work. We rest from our paid work as well as any unpaid work or errands we need to do. Now, once you've done all of that, the Sabbath, you've done the practices, the basic ones, you've got your living in community, maybe you've got a day for fasting, that might be another one where you've got a day or half a day where you aim a week to fast. Now add back in your negotiable activities, and you'll find that not all of these will probably fit anymore, because now you're prioritizing your relationship with Jesus and spiritual growth. Some of your activities, like watching a whole night of TV, might have to go, or maybe there's only 2 nights a week that you're at home where you used to be at home 5 nights a week. I don't know, but add back in the negotiable ones now and see if you can work them, change them. Maybe you can change your exercise routine. Maybe you can change a lot of your unplanned time that ends up being wasted because there's no plan for that hour or those minutes there. So look at it, plan around it, add back in those negotiable activities, but you'll probably find a bunch of them, they just need to be put to the side for the time being. And don't be afraid to do that while you give this new schedule a go. Now, analyze the schedule. Have a look at it. Is it realistic? Does it fit with your personality? Can it actually happen in a reasonable week? Obviously, there's going to be extreme things that you can't cater for, like sickness or illness or deaths in the family or whatever. But on a normal week, is this realistic? Does it fit with your personality? Does it fit with your emotional, mental capacity? We all have different limitations and capacities, so it's important that it fits for you. Is it simple and slow? That's important as well. So slow is going to be different for everyone, and simple, again, is going to be different for everyone. If you're married to someone who's an elite athlete, then your week's going to be really full, but it can still be slow. If you've got 7 kids, it's always going to be busy, but you can have a slowness about that family busyness with 7 kids. So does that fit for you? Now, finally, think about beyond the week. Think about a month. Think about maybe even a term, because some of those negotiable activities and even some of the spiritual practices, if you think about them over a month or even over a term, a quarter, you can actually fit in a lot more than you can in a week. Maybe fasting could be done 1 day a month. Maybe your exercise regime could have patches. Maybe you could have silence and solitude for a whole day, but just do that once a month or once a quarter. So don't just think over a week, because sometimes it can be difficult to fit everything in, but think over a month, think over a quarter, and that gives you more flexibility for your negotiable activities as well as for practicing these ways of Jesus. Finally, you just want to test it out. You've got to, habits changing don't happen quickly. They definitely don't happen over a week. So I'd suggest giving this 28 days, give it 4 weeks, give it a really good go. Allow time for the habits to form. You're going to find as you renovate your week and as you prioritize God more, is you're going to find you have withdrawal symptoms. The things that you used to do when you felt a bit down or a bit depressed, now there might not be space for. So you're going to have these withdrawal systems. You used to like going here or doing that or wasting your time there. So that's okay, but give it 28 days for the new habits to be formed. Don't be afraid of the reaction. Your body, your muscle memory is going to always want to go back to its old habits, but hold for 28 days. Discipline yourself. Sometimes the spiritual practices are called spiritual disciplines because they do require some discipline and some focus, some effort. They're not just going to happen magically, but I can guarantee you after 28 days, you're going to be in a much better headspace to look at the 4 weeks you've done and assess how that helped you get closer to Jesus, how that's helping you live a healthier life, how that's helping you flourish and live life to the full better. And then at the end of the 28 days, just review it, refine it, change some things, tweak some things, move some things around, and give it another 28 days until you review it again. So I hope that helps you. That's how to renovate, change your week, craft a schedule that actually puts God at the center, that prioritizes following Jesus, because you want to become like Jesus, you want to spend time with Jesus, and you want to do the things that Jesus does.